All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Speak and Grow Rich podcast. You guys are going to love and lean into today's interview with the one and only Eli Wilde. Hi, Eli. I'm so happy you're here.
Hey.
So he was actually a speaker and sharing a workshop in a paid mentorship with a very high level 8-figure coach that I have. And I was blown away by his speaking, his knowledge, and the details, because he worked with Tony Robbins as his speaker. And you know what he did? He had 30,400 seminars that he ran for Tony Robbins. So he would go into cities and speak and sell and bring people into Tony Robbins way before Tony Robbins was the Tony Robbins that we all know today. So I had to have him on here. You have so many gems. I want you to just dive in and give us all your goods. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you got started into speaking and working with Tony Robbins, and where are you now?
The short version is I moved to LA when I'm 20, just turned 23. I've been living in a tent in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado for 8 months. Come to LA, live in my car. I get my first sales job and I suck. And so I start reading books on sales, psychology, persuasion, and it was principle-based stuff, which is important, but I needed to know like tactics, what to say. And I find myself digging into my own psychology because I didn't speak well. I didn't enunciate. I get hung up on. I didn't have the confidence, and kind of my mental version of myself and what I was doing in communication was not really effective. And so I found a body of work called NLP, and I went down that rabbit hole. And then somebody said to me one day, well, you should check out Tony Robbins. I'm like, who's Tony Robbins? And I get the book, amazing. I get the tapes, the CDs, and I'm listening to this guy's voice, and he's got no script. And it was just very different than anything I'd heard. And then I saw you speaking at an event. It was like Robert Kiyosaki, Susie Orman, Donald Trump, like all these big name type speakers. And it was good, not great. But then Tony comes on. It was like 40,000 people. Tony's supposed to speak for 2 hours. He spoke for 4.5. And then at the end, he made an offer. And I was, I used double my rent money. I used everything I had to be invested. And, I made so many distinctions for myself. I didn't want to let it go. So I called the company about 200 times in a period of about 2 weeks and used the techniques that I was learning to get to the right people, got an interview, got a job in sales, low man on the totem pole. Within a year, I was like one of the best. Tony's son wanted to be a speaker. Tony said to his son, Jarek, he says, well, you need to live with the top guy because that guy's going to be hungry. You're going to learn things being around him. Fortunately, I was that top guy, and now I'm living with Tony's son and brother-in-law. And through osmosis and through being able to ask Jarek or Scott, like, hey, ask your dad this. I just had this thing. Can you ask him that? And I was just really hungry to learn. And the insights from Tony, like he would, hop on and coach us. Like he's like in between calls with Bill Clinton and Oprah and all these people. And then he's taking time to share some of the insights from those calls to shift those people. And, and then like turning around suicides and all of it. And really, once I got into the work and really studied what Tony was doing, I had this light bulb moment. Even when I first saw him, I was like, if this guy can use some technique to turn around a suicide, I can certainly learn those techniques to turn around a sale, get somebody to invest, get somebody to not think about it, get somebody to not need to talk to their spouse if I know those techniques. And so that's been the journey to really, of course I wanted to make money. I wanted to be number one, all of that. But, just like Tony, I had a sincere desire to learn, to grow, and to serve. And I knew that if I could give people an experience with me, they'd be more invested, not just in my program, but in themselves and their future. And that process of getting people to make transformation and the way they view themselves, the world, money, and time became the science of what we've kind of put together today as it relates to sales and influence.
That's amazing. So how many years did you work with him in his industry?
Started in 2005. I worked for a few years. I was an actor for a bit, not successfully. I was cast to be in the biggest movie in the world. I was cast to be Superman in the movie Superman Returns. Came out like 2004, down to me and a couple other guys. But I just didn't have the confidence, didn't go for it. But after a few years of working with Tony, I had that confidence to go for it. And so when I came back to LA, I quit my job with Tony, got into acting, had some success, but I got really sick. And then I ended up coming back to work for Tony. Tony basically saved my life. I worked for him. I came back in 2010 and I worked half the week for Tony, and half the week I was in bed or a hospital bed.
my
But Tony
goodness.
mentored me, like, much more hands-on, reaching out and things like that year. And I broke every sales record in the industry while working half as much. And, the distinctions there took me further. So I went back to Tony's company. I left a couple times to go back and forth, starting businesses, stem cell, and like everything, my own consulting. But I kept on coming back to Tony. So off and on for the better part of 15 years, like 2005 to 2019 was my last full cycle. But in 2020, he even had me do the sales pitch at his big virtual event with 24,000 people.
Oh,
So
wow.
he's just become a friend. So I'll never leave that relationship in that community, but hands-on working well over a decade, but definitely some time in between to focus on my own projects.
That's incredible. What an amazing experience. And so when you would go, so you would actually go and have live seminars.
Yeah.
And then you would enroll people and sell them into what price point was it for a UPW, his big event?
Yep. Yeah. So basically this is the same job that Tony had for Jim Rohn when Tony started out. And, there's marketing is different today, but a lot of people didn't know Tony when I started 2005. And we were the sales, the marketing, the follow-up, the systems, like you're everything. And they drop us off in a city like LA, New York, whatever. And there'd be about a dozen of us. We'd infiltrate sales-based companies, real estate, insurance, mortgage, whatever, to try to we have to connect with the decision maker, call ourselves, get in there, do a presentation. Some people buy, some people we follow up with, and then get referrals and just kind of build a book of business in about 3 months, then off to the next city. And so we just kind of do everything, everything, and selling anywhere from like $1,000 to about $3,000 for a ticket. And once I got good, I got really good at selling the high ticket, the diamond tickets and all of that, because it was more commission for me. And really the price seating, juxtaposition, all of that stuff started to infuse a lot of that in my tickets per meeting. I tracked everything, my average ticket sale, average referrals. Like I really created it like a system. I hired people to follow up with people that were on the fence that filled out part of the form.
Ooh,
and
nice.
then, created systems for people to text them, call them, to really create a business out of it. And so that's, the price points varied a bit based on groups and packages. Because once I, got a bit known in Tony's world, I got to speak to some of the bigger companies, and I would facilitate like 200 people going at once, which would be bigger sale. And so and we had package deals and all of that. So it was a lot of creation on the fly, a lot of customization.
That's incredible. And I love your follow-up system that you had for the people. So the fortune's definitely in the follow-up, and then the systems. And then you were like, I'm going to make more if I sell more. And then you're serving better. So you sold those higher level programs. So so a lot of people watching this podcast, they are speakers. So what are some of your ninja tips to help people convert cold leads into paid people?
Yeah.
And paid enrolled clients.
It's interesting. We teach a lot around identity, and Sigmund Freud says the strongest force inside of the human psyche is to remain consistent with how you see yourself. And if you've taken like the DISC profile, DISC, there's people that are natural salespeople, a lot of speakers, they're high D, high I, social decision makers. And then there's like the process driven people, which will always be harder to sell. And so you're going to have a mix. And even if you sell on a big stage, 10% of people probably ready to go now, 10% doesn't matter if you had the cure for cancer, they're not going to buy. But there's that 80% in between that can go each way. And a lot of getting those people is in the proper framing, not just in how they need to think about time and money or other people. And so I say there's internals and externals. Externals are things like time, money, other people, talking to my spouse. And so I can't talk to their spouse for them in the moment. I can't free up their calendar, and I can't just put more money in their bank account or discount my stuff. But I can change people's internal representation of what those things mean based on their beliefs, their values, their identity, their standards, their perceptions, and their patterns as it relates to where they are and where they want to be, getting them to see that it's their own thoughts, beliefs, feelings that have locked them into a prison, if you will, that they need to break free of. And so shifting their identity to be a decision maker, to be, and I'd say I got 200 people, salespeople in a room, and I'd say, hey, we're all in sales, because people, I was doing sales presentations to salespeople that didn't want to be sold, that knew I was there to sell. And so like that, you got to kind of break that fourth wall and say, here's what's really happening for me. And some of it really direct, based on how much sensory acuity, behavioral flexibility, trust, and all of that I was able to get based on their perception of me. But if they didn't perceive me and they were really kind of combative, I would neutralize that. I'd mind read that. I'd be vulnerable. I'd connect. And so I'd get them really connected to me. I'd tell some stories. I'd make them laugh, all of that, to put them in a emotional state. And a state, and we all know that people people buy on emotion, not logic. And so I've got to get them in an emotional state. And we break that down based on patterns of focus, meaning, and physiology. So shifting them, getting to move, touch them, to each other, say things, write things down. Now they're becoming more compliant, verbally compliant, physically compliant, and then mentally compliant, where I'm saying, here's what you want to think about. Here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to understand. Here's something nobody's ever told you before. And so getting them into that mental space after I've warmed them up a bit, and then it's shifting their identity in a way. And I could say something like this. I say, I'm talking to a bunch of salespeople. I say, well, you're all salespeople. When you call a company, you're asking for the what maker, the decision maker. That's right. A lot of times you have a hard time breaking through because you can't get the decision maker, and you waste a lot of time with the non-decision maker. But here's the thing. People who are like themselves. In order for you to connect with decision makers, you need to be a what? You need to be a decision maker. And so write this down. Anybody in business who can't make a decision is useless. Write that down. People who can't make decisions in business, not that they're not useless in life. Like we all have a purpose, but in the realm of business and success, those people that waste your time, those people they're useless. Write it down. Non-decision makers are useless. So I'm getting them to say out loud, people who can't make a decision are useless. I've got to be a decision maker. So getting them to buy into the identity of who they need to be successful, helping them create this identity. I say, look, I was voted the quietest kid in school, really shy, but I knew I had to create a version of myself that would be more successful so I can support my family. And that's what we're going to do here for you, because the best version of yourself, your best thoughts and decisions have got you exactly where you are. And if you're completely happy with where you are, you have no desire to grow, I've got nothing for you. But if a plant's not growing, what is it doing? That's right, it's dying. And I'm not saying you're dying physically, even though we are, but a part of you just doesn't feel alive. You think about the first time you kissed somebody or drove a car, or closed a deal, there was an aliveness inside of you. And I know you've got some of that. Would it be okay if I showed you how to have more growth, have more of that in your life? If so, say yes. So I'm framing their internal view of themselves over and over again, and I'm creating some anchors to get them to buy into the fact that they've got a gap. And we create that gap where they are, where they want to be, and what's in the way. And then the things that I get them to tell me that are stopping them from being at their next level, that they're really bought into, that it's possible. The things that they tell me, procrastination, fear, self-doubt, time, money, I show them with the offer, how my offer closes the gap. And so it's a sequence, but there's a lot of emotional buy-in and a lot of framing. So I know there was a lot there, but that's essentially what's happening over 3 days or 2 days or 20 minutes or whatever. Those are the shifts that need to occur. Oh, you muted out.
So changing their identity. So thank you. So changing their identity and becoming a decision maker. So what if they decide not to buy your offer? Are you just celebrating the fact? How do you persuade them in a way to buy the offer, even though maybe they've decided they're not buying? How do you get them? I know you're talking about 80% of the people, right? Because 20%, those other 10% won't make a decision or aren't going to do it.
Well, that's the distinction. I'm never selling an offer. Like what we're doing, we call it the irresistible future formula, but we're always selling the payoff, not the process. Right. And so I get them really anchored on the process, and they're committed to do whatever it takes to hit the process. And then the offer, it's like, here's where you can turn decades into days. You don't have to do the trial and error. Smart people, they always cut a check for speed because it's the one thing you don't get back. And so, and then through the emotions and the stories and all of that, you've got to really sell the payoff, and that they mostly hook to their commitment to have that. And then it's like, would it be okay if I shared with you how we've helped all these people, even myself, go from not only here financially, but being able to support their family, being able to this. Would you like me to show you exactly how we do it? It's like, and then people, even on a sales call, before I make any offer, I've got to have people tell me they want it. They tell me they want it before I just make the offer. Like even on a sales call, it might say, okay, well, I'm curious. It sounds like this, but I guess why is that so important to you now though? Like, why didn't we have this conversation 5 years ago? You were putting this off, and like, what's making this a now conversation? So they start telling themselves why now. They've got to have that. And then even if going into like an offer on the phone, I could say, okay, well, based on everything you've told me, what we're doing here can help you because you know how you said this and you've got this problem because that's making you feel here. So I can walk you through the process of what it takes to get you from here to here in about 90 days. But you let me know, where do you want to go from here? Oh, show me the process. So they have to buy into, instead of pitching, it's not the perfect pitch. It's we're enrolling people in a version of themselves, and the process that is what makes them compelled to buy.
That's genius. So with the process, are you selling the process or you're selling the payoff? Because I think a lot of people get stuck on I've got to do this and that and this, where they sell. A lot of amateurs, I think they focus on, you get this many Trello boards and you get this many Slack and you get this many guidebooks. So you're not really selling the deliverables, but you're selling, what is it that you focus on to help them?
They need to see the deliverables, but it's the logical part of the mind, but it is like a 10% piece. It's all the payoff.
The payoff. So you're painting the payoff of the pleasure. And that would be, like you said, the more money, the more time, etc. So I think but when you're saying you're selling the process, it's about them becoming that new identity.
Yeah. And, it's the pleasure pain principle. People more motivated by FOMO and pain. If you had this process, that we've just walked you through, we only had time to show you a little bit, but you've seen these results, these testimonials. If you had this hand-holding, the support, the accountability, the community, and a proven process, who here thinks they'd make more money? How much more money would you make? Well, do you really believe that? If you did this, do you really believe that? Like, don't try to impress me. Do you really believe that? Yeah, I'd make 100,000 more, $1 million more if I had that. Okay. So is it fair to say, let's look at this another way. Is it fair to say that if you don't make some real commitments today, if you don't make some real changes to stop doing what you're doing and hold on to something new, a proven process, is it fair to say it's going to cost you and your family $100,000, $200,000 just in the next 12 months?
Right.
So we got to get the cost of inaction in there too. And all that's got to be seated.
So then you're probably comparing, hey, this is going to cost you 200,000 and my program is only 20,000. So do you want to pay the 200,000? Is that how you do it? I know a lot of speakers, they do that sort of comparison. Is that what you do as well?
The price juxtaposition, or you could even go really deep into one part of your offer. Like for our sales program, if we go down that rabbit hole, people talked about follow-up a lot. We've got a process called the follow-up fix. Say you take 100 sales calls a month and say you're good and you close 30% of them. Well, what happens to the 70%? Say you have just a 5K offer. With our follow-up fix, if you only got one more sale a week with no extra ad costs, just our follow-up system, leading with value, a follow-up system to get one more person to say yes per week. That's how many sales a week? Or a month. That's 4. What did that mean to you financially? 20 grand. Well, what is that for a year? I make them do the math. 240 grand. So just with one part of our process, you're going to make how much more a year by installing this? 240. And that's just one part. That's just the bonus. Good. And so we're getting the price seating and anchoring where so it's like, think about it. You didn't do it last year. How much different would your life be today if you had that extra $240,000 in your bank account?
Right.
What are you going to do moving forward? And what does that 240 grand mean to you? Is that kids in private school? Is that making sure that you pay off your parents' mortgage? I don't know what it means to you, but it's got to mean more than just numbers in your bank account. That's the emotion that's going to get you to do the thing you need to do. The emotion, the energy in motion. What is it really going to look like for you? Without a vision, people what? They perish. So what's the vision of what you're going to do? You need to figure this out first. And so getting really, really enrolled and what it means to them and how their life's going to look differently is part of selling the payoff, not the process.
That's amazing. And painting the picture of your paying off your parents' mortgage, what would that feel like? Or taking your child, so you're giving them a word picture so that they can feel that. That's huge. Okay. So let's talk about tone. Can you give us some tone and pitch, some examples? In a previous interview I had with you, you had this whole idea of like the authoritarian and then the friend.
Well,
And
yeah,
I love audiences like that.
Really, Tony took me to Vegas, me and another guy to Vegas for a day. We did like fight training with the Navy SEAL, shot machine guns, like just had a boys' day. And the whole purpose of it was to teach us this one technique he calls postures. We've really refined it a lot. So there's 3 basic postures, and then I've got tonalities to go along with them. But the posture, the tonality can change, but one posture is superior. It's like, I'm saying, you got to do this. And I'm here, could be like Garrett J. White, somebody like, I'm here and I'm bringing it and I'm being commanding. A lot of times you see a famous person do that. Could be a Myron, could be a Grant Cardone. They're already famous, so they can do that. Now, if you stay in that posture too long, people will see you as a jerk. So it's important, but you can't stay there. And most speakers are monotone. So they're superior, and then there's equal, like friend, like, hey, we're all the same. We're in this together. And then there's inferior, especially when so 2 people can't occupy the same posture at the same time, because then you have butting heads. So somebody's really dominant towards me, or I've got an audience full of all, 8-figure earners and stuff like that. They have an ego. I'll say, it's like, I'm really honored to be here with you. I know like each one of you could get up here and I'd be taking notes. And so I make sure that I soften that on a sales call or a group, and you can feel that energy. And there's these postures that shift. And the key is being able to have that behavioral flexibility. I spend 80% of my time equal. And sometimes I'll ask questions in a way that allows people to drop their guard where they don't feel pushed. And then they feel overconfident in a way that's good. They'll kind of give information that maybe they usually wouldn't, or whatever, because they're there. So it's framing it. And so the postures I could talk about for an hour, but the corresponding tonalities to match what you actually asked me. There's typically, the tonalities that align. There's really 4 that I do a lot. There's others too, but a basic 4, really a basic 3, but I'll give you 4. 1, and this is like relates to equal. It's not just equal, like we're friends. Also, my communication cadence will be what is called sage. And so this is typically the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi or every Morgan Freeman character in a movie. This wise, like if you imagine a CEO of a company, somebody who's a boss, there's a cadence in which they communicate, which automatically triggers a script inside of somebody's unconscious that this is somebody who's powerful and worth speaking to. A lot of speakers go, hey, I'm so excited to be here and all of this stuff. Well, that might get people excited, but then you're like a cheerleader, not a leader. And so I'll get back into this sage, wisdom, like your granddaddy energy type voice, sage, wise.
Yes.
And then there's warrior, where it's like, it's boom, 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 I'm here. And then there's like this non-combative, I call it the lover voice. It's really about you this weekend doing something for yourself. And that whisper, people drop in and they draw in. And then sometimes changing it with the jester, and I'll do something completely offbeat, and even my physiology will change. And so that is like a pattern interrupt. And after you interrupt a pattern, there's like we can splice some things into people's unconscious, because it's confusion pattern. Is it this or that? But I don't know, but here's what that means. And so it's kind of embedding a lot of this language through, and some of it's based on hypnosis, NLP, and all of that. And it's what's worked in therapy. And I do a little bit of that. It's hard to teach people, but this is really the advanced. And you have to be really refined in what you're doing at that level. But those are basically archetypes and postures.
I love this. I remember one of the very first high-end coaching programs I invested in was 15,000. And I remember the woman was sage, and she was like probably 10 years younger than me, but she dropped down into this ancient grandmother voice. And it was like, it got me. But I love this. And I think our listeners can now start to sort of see how speakers, and I like what you're saying. A lot of people, where they're more stuck in the jester, or more stuck in the warrior, or more stuck in the cheerleader, and then they're not leading.
Yeah.
And then they're the lover the whole time,
Yeah.
but they're not commanding.
If you stay at one posture, it's boring to listen to a
Mhm.
lot, and it's not as engaging. And so a lot of the physiology, eye contact, movement, stories, spatial anchoring, all these things, we say we teach inside of our process, like, as one part of our Trust Trinity, the $100 million speaker secrets. And it's a breakdown of all these things. And we try to give everybody everything. But then I say, hey, here's the critical ones you must master in order to be this. And then when I review people, I'm like, more of this. And a lot of people, they need to be more vulnerable, but some people are too empathetic, and the whole thing is like the variance, because you can't influence somebody unless you have their attention, and you can't force somebody into buying, no matter how good your product is. And so we need to be a little bit more engaging, to do that.
Right.
And that's it. It affects somebody's nervous system. And, one of the ways that I think think of it all, the communication based on what I've learned in NLP and all the work. It's not just what am I saying to your conscious mind? It's like, what am I saying to your nervous system? Like affecting your nervous system in a way. I want you to feel excited yet safe. And there's a balance there that even in sales, we say, read the person, not the script. And so reading the room, all of that, even if it's a virtual room, you can pick up on cues.
That's good. It's so good. I know we're wrapping up. I just want to ask you one quick question about how do you prepare? Because obviously you've done 20 or more years of really having boots on the ground and doing this.
Yeah.
How would you say to our audience how to best prepare to improve their speaking and persuasion and closing?
Yeah, we have kind of a checklist of about 15 things that I teach at my live events, but I tell people they just get the first 4. And these things are the 4 things that are done before you get up there. These are like the critical ones. One is belief, and so I've talked to so many audiences where they clearly had a belief they didn't need to be there. They didn't want to hear what I had to say. But my conviction, it's like when 2 people meet, the person that's more certain will influence the other person. So I could have 200 people staring at me with the thought, I don't want to be here. I don't have to hear what you have to say. And initially I was like, well, screw these people, like whatever, like I'm so good if they don't want it. Or some people were in pain and trauma, had been ripped off. They're really the most negative and combative people. But then my belief came, well, these are the people that need it the most. And so it looks like this. If somebody's like, I don't need to hear what you have to say. I'm like, wow, this person really needs to hear what I have to say. And I've just anchored my nervous system to the point of a conviction, this certainty. And when you get up with belief, like if you have true belief, it's not fake. It's something you can't mimic because there's an animation to the voice and in the eyes and just your voice. There's something there when somebody owns it. And when like you own it, and all of us, we treat, the Trust Trinity, and we create all of that, but it's really about creating this foundation. And the foundation, just like this building that I'm in, there's a foundation. The foundation is the stuff beneath the surface, my beliefs, my values. So I've got to be really clear in who I am, who these people are, who they are to me, and what this will do for them. And I've got to have unshakable belief in that. So belief is one. Second thing is making sure that your physiology is good. Your energy actually comes from your body. You can do all the mindset stuff all day long, but if you go to step on the gas and nothing's there. So being in a physiology of excellence, some of it's self-care, taking care of yourself, but you can see, and I've done so many events with quote unquote great speakers, and the way they move, they hide behind a podium, or the way they move is just, it's timid, and they stand in one spot. And so I don't plant,
Or they pace. A lot of people pace.
Nervous energy. And so intentional with my movement and my physiology. Because, in NLP, they say this, communication is 7% words, 38% tonality, and then 55% body language. And when I go on stage, I get to take myself to an exercise where I'm like bigger than the room, and the way that I'll fill the room up with that energy. And there's a sense of presence there that people connect with. And you can see when somebody's there, when they have it, when they don't. So it's belief, physiology. And the third thing is outcome. All leaders have an outcome. Napoleon Hill called it definiteness of purpose. So I've got clear targets, not just targets in what I want them to do, because I know that all action, somebody buying or not buying, are preceded by thoughts and feelings. Every action you ever take, there's a belief that leads to a thought and a feeling before you act.
Right.
And so my targets are what I want them thinking and feeling about me, about themselves, about life, about money. And so I've got clear targets and outcomes on how I can serve these people. And I'm going to anchor to those clearly defined targets over and over again. And then the fourth is rapport. Rapport is power. And a lot of people think rapport is getting people to like you. It's not that. I define it as trust and responsiveness. And leaders always go first. And I can't expect something of them that I'm not giving in return. So I do the work. I get really associated to who are these people? You know, if I'm talking to real estate agents, like, you know, like what is they're doing open houses on the weekend. They've got kids. Like who are these people? What are their beliefs? And I think to myself, like, what do I like about these people? What do I love about these people? Like, why do I care? And so I'm just like, you know, I do the work and I really take the time to think about that. And there's a natural sincerity as to why I'm there, because I'm truly, and we say, and you could use it as a technique, but you know, the best way to get yourself to care is to actually care. And
Right.
so some people it's just the money, but I really do care. And so because of that, I do that work. Who are these people? Like what's going on in their life? Like what's going on in the economy right now? Are people scared? And I don't address it as like, hey, these are dumb thoughts. It's not a big deal. Like, look, you know, I feel that. I understand where you are, but I also understand that's not where you can stay. And deep down, you feel that too, don't you? And so here's what this is really all about. And so it connects deeper because I've done that work.
That's pure gold, everything dripping, dripping, dripping over the Zoom. That is amazing. What do you have when people, you know how you said, I think a lot of speakers, they'll go on that offense to rejection. How do you help people manage that instead of being offended? They don't like me. They don't want to buy. How did you I guess you came from your top 4 come froms.
Yeah. I mean, these are things I got from Tony talking to him, but you know, essentially as Mother Teresa said, all communication is a loving response or a cry for help. And if it's not a loving response, then there's only one other thing it could be. And often those people that are the most angry and frustrated, they're the people in the most pain, because no baby is that way. It's learned behavior. They've learned how to be a certain way to protect themselves because they've been hurt before in the past. Their standards have not been met. They've been let down. Maybe they let themselves down and they don't want to go through that again. So now they put up a wall. And the way that we break through that wall isn't by pushing sometimes. It's getting people from the inside to essentially, you know, we say the walls around you can keep you safe, but they can also become a prison. And oftentimes people they have to unlock the door from the inside, and that's a choice. And so that's, you know, to get people to feel safe enough to truly come out and be vulnerable themselves. You know, it's a quid pro quo. If we want to get something, we give something. And so I'll be sincere and truly be understanding, because we've all been that person. And sometimes there's the law of the mirror, the reason this is showing up. Maybe it's just happening because, and if we're triggered by it, it's part of ourselves that we've not yet dealt with. And so it's all working for you as a speaker, and to work for somebody else, to help somebody else out of their pain, you have to release your own. And and you're not going to be triggered by it unless you've done that work. And so it's a process. You know, we're always, you know, going through stuff. And as we create change, you know, things break and then we progress, and that creates more change, which makes more things break. And so it's just a never ending cycle. And so a lot of people get locked in something that happened, a significant emotional event from 10, 15 years ago, and they've not grown because they've locked themselves away in an emotional pattern. And so we get to release them through that, through conversation and speaking and insight.
That's amazing. Such gold. Thank you so much. I mean, I could just keep asking you questions. I know where time is of the essence, and you have a free gift. You have an offer to share with us so we can continue the conversation and work with you in some way if we want to. So feel free to share that.
We have a beautiful website now, wildinfluence.com. First time I've done any marketing. We just got the site there. And I just put together, so on my computer right now, I've done $100 million in sales. And so some of it was speaking, selling, all of that, and coaching services. And so I essentially put together a framework. We've got a couple of different assets where people can understand a little bit of the psychology, but what is the mental syntax somebody must go through on a sales call? Because even when you do a speech, some people will buy it, but a lot of your bigger sales will come on a phone call from you or your team.
Right.
What is that syntax that people need to go through? And what are some of the exact questions that we ask? So we give that away right there on the site.
So valuable. Thank you. So wildinfluence.com, WILDE.
Yep.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And we can follow you on, I know you're on YouTube. Are you?
Not much. Going to start
Seen
doing
it.
the YouTube, just starting with Instagram. Going to do all the things. People just find us on word of mouth right now. I pretty much just only post on Facebook. I'm ancient. And so, but we have a really good following on there. Just people that are, my little hub of friends. And
Right.
so this Facebook, I post all the time, personal stuff, insights. I'm breaking down a talk with Grant Cardone on Saturday. So I'm critiquing some of the speakers. And so I'll be there and I share some of those insights, like what was good, what could change, what they missed. I share that stuff all the time.
And you'll put that on your Facebook page?
All the time. Yeah. Just my personal page. And I do
That's how
videos.
I found you. Somehow I remember you coming on and you were I don't know how we were friends, but I remember you saying, I'm done working with Tony, and you had this awesome photo of you and this story. And then I've stayed connected with you, and that's probably since 2019.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We're about to start
working.
marketing. The market doesn't have any idea who I am, but the top 1% of like 9-figure companies, I'm intimately in there. So it's time we start marketing. So we're going to have a much bigger year this year and get the message out.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you for your time and excellence and your service to this industry and humanity. And thank you for showing up. And I wish you all the best. And everybody watching, be sure to follow him on wildinfluence.com and on Facebook under Eli Wilde.
That's me. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for being here. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe and share. Definitely share it, because this was valuable, especially if you're a speaker and you want to help people. I love your heart to help, and I really feel that. And that is what we're doing as communicators and speakers. And this is like all the ninja tactics, how to do it. So I'll see you guys next week.
Bye.